for limestone over the years about paying for post-secondary. And the reason that we want you to understand all the ins and outs of paying for post-secondary is really because if you understand these steps, then you're going to have a smoother transition to the rest of the steps. So we call this the financial staircase. And of course, it's not everybody's trajectory. Everybody has a different plan, but usually some of these steps happen in most people's lives. So probably you're at step 3 right now. So you would have gone from step 1 to getting your first bank account. So if you don't have that one yet, you want to get one. And then step 2, you've probably had some sort of part-time job, whether it was babysitting or a part-time job at Loblaws or Tim Hortons or something like that. There's not that many mistakes that you can make in these first 2 steps. If you've opened a bank account and you've had a job, hopefully you've saved a bit of money. That would be great in these 2 steps, but there's not that many mistakes you can make. When you take this 3rd step to post-secondary, there's lots of costs and lots of options and things can happen. So we just want to make you aware of what's going to happen as you go to post-secondary so that you don't have so much impact on these other steps, because we've seen people make mistakes here and that impacts them later on. So you want to always think that you're making good decisions to help you do a smooth transition to the next steps. So let's talk about college and university. So what are you looking at if you're going to university? So these are 2021 numbers taken from the StatsCan website. So this is the average tuition for a university in Ontario with residence. So tuition on average is going to cost you almost $9,000. Ancillary fees, those are, every university charges their own fees, but everyone has them, and they're usually about $1,000. You don't have any choice, you have to pay them. Residence and meal plan, $16,395. Books and supplies, we budgeted $1,100 for that one, but that would differ based on your program. And then I allowed $4,500 for spending. So that can differ between people, but what really I allowed for was $100 a week while you're in school and an extra $500 thinking Christmas or reading week, that sort of thing. You might spend a little bit more. So that's not, I'm being pretty conservative, even though $4,500 sounds like a lot of money. That's not probably out of the ballpark in terms of what you might spend. I talk to lots of students all the time, and I think that's really quite conservative. Some spend more than that. So that puts a total of $31,995 for going to university in Ontario with residence. Of course, there's many ways to make this cheaper. You could live at home, you could get an apartment, you could get a room in a house, you could buy groceries and not have the meal plan. There's lots of ways to make this cheaper, but I just wanted you to sort of see the worst case scenario here. So what about OSAP? So what is OSAP? Those are the student loans from the government. So when you go to university or college, you can apply for OSAP. Everybody should do that, whether you think you're eligible or not. And then depending on your parents' income or your family income, then you're going to get an amount or not from OSAP. So the maximum OSAP a student can receive who's going away to university is $11,900. So the average cost of the university is $31,900. Take away the OSAP, there's a $20,000 difference. So we just want you to think about that difference. some kids think, oh, it's fine, I'm going to get student loans, but student loans are not going to cover everything. And we want you to be aware of that before you go to university, not 2 weeks in. So let's look at college for a second. So this is the average cost for an Ontario college program. So a tuition, $2,400. So it's significantly cheaper than university. You still are going to have the ancillary fees, but they're a little bit lower, $800. Books and supplies, $1,300. Residence and meal plan, $9,200. And I allowed $4,000 for spending for college. I didn't throw in the extra $500. So that put the total cost at $17,700. Again, this is an average, so every school and every program is different, but this is roughly what you're looking at. And again, there's ways to make this cheaper. We're just looking at sort of the worst case scenario, and we want you to be aware of it. So again, maximum OSAP is $11,900. So then we've got a $5,800 difference as opposed to a $20,000 difference. I'm just going to stop the share yet for a second. Any questions about that so far? Don't hesitate to just throw out a question. You can turn your mic on and ask me a question, interrupt me at any point, or you can put it in the chat if you want. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. This is important stuff, so if you have a question, don't hesitate. So where's that difference going to come from? If you're going to college or you're going to university, where are you going to get that difference in between the student loans and your total cost? So there's lots of options. Scholarships is definitely an option. And Melissa, you've got another session coming up next week where you're talking about scholarships and student loans. Is that right?
Yeah, next week is OSAP, but our last session in May is going to be about scholarships and grants.
Okay, great. So there's tons of scholarships and grants out there, but it's a matter of applying for them, finding them, being diligent, and being on top of it. So you need to inform yourself about that and be on top of it. There's like millions of dollars in unclaimed scholarships in Canada. So it's really important to apply for those. And I think it's a lot easier now. So you're going to learn about that in your sessions, but those are two options. Of course, your parents could be an option. That's not for everybody. And really, it's not your parents' responsibility to pay for your education. It's your education. So you need to sort it out. If your parents are helping you, that's great. Give them a great big hug and say thank you. But really, this is your education. So maybe you want to have a conversation with your parents to see if they're going to help you or what the help might look like. And there's a variety of help that can come from your parents or grandparents. So that might be worth a conversation. With the parents comes the RESP. So some parents and grandparents have set up what's called an RESP, Registered Education Savings Plan. And that is a government account where your parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles can put money, and then the government adds grant money to that account. So somebody may have set up an RESP for you. And if they have, again, big hug and say thank you, because that will be very helpful in paying for your schooling. So savings, and what I mean from savings is, have you saved any money from part-time jobs or summer jobs? Have you got money saved up in your bank account? Could you put that towards your university or your college? And then part-time job. Lots of kids get part-time jobs once they get to school, so that they have money for the school year. So maybe if you're going to college and you can get a job. I had a job, I went to Queen's and I had a job in the Queen's Library, and I worked 10 hours a week in the library, and that just gave me extra money. So that went towards my costs. So a part-time job through the school year is not a bad idea. I always think it's hard in first year to have a part-time job, or harder. And then once you've got the hang of university or college, then it's easier second year to sort of adjust your life around a job. But really, if you need to get a job, then you get a job. Any questions about that? Okay. So what's next? Well, we want you to make a plan. If you go into this without a plan, it can end poorly for you. Hold on, my power, there we go. Make a plan. We want you to make a plan so that you don't go into this blind and think, okay, I'm going to get OSAP and I'll sort it out. We want you to have a plan and a budget and have an idea of how this is going to work. So I'm going to show you Kelsey's plan. This is a sample, but I took this from a girl I know. Just changed the name. So she's going to Algonquin. So she did her research and she found all her expenses to go with Algonquin. This was last year. She did this, but the numbers are very similar. So there's her tuition is $2,400. Her ancillary fees were $800. Residence and meal plan, this is Algonquin's numbers, $9,200. Her books were $1,300. She added in $2,500 because she wanted a new laptop, and she allowed $4,000 for spending. So that put her total at $20,200. So when you're making your plan, this is the first thing you do. You total up all of the expenses for where you're going. These, I'm going to show you another sample with some different expenses, but these are the typical ones. But you might have something different that's important to you. So you put that in. If there's something that's important to you in the expenses, then you put it in. So now she's looking at all the ways she's got sources of income. So she had, but she has it again this summer, a job at the Y where she makes $200 a week for 8 weeks. So she thinks she can save $1,600 in the summer. She's also got savings from her previous jobs of $1,500. She's going to get $11,100 from OSAP, and her parents have agreed to give her $2,000. So her total of income is $16,200. So now she has to figure out the difference between the two. So when you're doing this for yourself, you want to think about where can I get income from? Maybe you're getting a scholarship. Maybe you're going to have a part-time job this summer. How much are you going to get from OSAP? Talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents. Okay, so Kelsey, what's she going to do for her $4,000? So now she's brainstorming. How is she going to come up with that difference? So she's thinking she'll probably get a part-time job during the school year. She's considering using less spending money. And then she's also thought about buying a cheaper laptop. So that could maybe save her $1,000 here. She could get a couple thousand, maybe more at the part-time job. She could spend less money, but at least she knows, okay, she's short $4,000 and she's got to sort that out. So she's not going into the year blind. She's got an idea of what she's going to do. Any questions about Kelsey? Okay. We'll go back to the presentation and we'll look at another one. Okay, this is Dylan, again, real kid. So he was considering Sir Sanford Fleming, the electrician program, or Queen's University electrical engineering, and he wasn't sure, but he wanted to look at the costs of both. And that's probably the same for you. If you're considering different schools or different programs, you don't just do the budget for one, do it for everything that you're considering so that you know the financial implications of your decisions. So let's look at Dylan's plan. So he's looking at Fleming here and Queens here. So he lives in Kingston. He would have to go to Peterborough to go to Sir Sanford Fleming. So he would have to have residence and meal plan. So the tuition there is 2,200. The residence and meal plan is 8,500. The ancillary fees are 1,100 at Sanford Fleming. Books and supplies are 1,500. He wants a laptop, 2,500. He's allowed 4,000 for spending money. He also allowed $800 for travel because he wants to be able to come back and see his girlfriend on the weekends. And so he wanted to put that into his budget money to take the bus or whatever he's going to do to get back and forth some weekends to see his girlfriend. So that was Dylan's choice. He had threw that in there too. So Queen's electrical engineering, he could live at home. So that made a huge difference. He has no costs for residence and meal plan, but the tuition for Queen's engineering was $12,000 as opposed to 2,200 over here. The ancillary fees were only 600. Books and supplies were 1,200. Same laptop, same spending money. I thought that he might spend less money because he was living at home, but he still wanted the $4,000 in there. So not much difference between these two, except that he is living at home here. So he didn't need the travel and he didn't need the residence and the meal plan. So the choice really is live at home here, or residence and meal plan here. If he decided to live in residence, the Queen's double room residence and meal plan is 14,700. So that would add another 15,000 to this cost. So he would be at 35,000 if he lived in residence here in Kingston. Any questions about Dylan's plan? This is what we want you to do. So when you're looking at the schools, do the budget and total up the expenses and do some comparisons. It's kind of crazy the differences between the schools. Okay, ask questions at any point, guys. Don't be shy. Okay, we'll go back here. So I just wanted to talk quickly about some of the financial pitfalls that I see some students making, because it is pretty stressful. If you're short $4,000 or you're short $5,000 and you know you have to make that up and you're trying to figure it out, you just don't want to make bad choices for yourself. So I just want to explain these three things because these are where I see the biggest problems. So almost immediately when you get to university or college, you're going to be given a credit card, basically. You don't have to take it, but we do use we use credit cards a lot more online than we ever used to, and it is pretty handy. So if you get a credit card, understand that it is very, very important to make at least the minimum payment. So when you have a credit card, every month you get a bill. Say you charge $300 in train tickets to your credit card. When you get the bill, it's going to say $300, but it's also going to give a minimum payment. And the minimum payment might be $10. So you have to at least make that minimum payment of $10 to keep your credit rating, and we're going to talk about that in a second, in good standing. Ideally, you want to pay off the whole $300. Ideally, you charged the train tickets and then you transferred from your bank account to your credit card and it was paid off right away. That would be a perfect scenario. And that is how you should use a credit card. That's the best way. Just charge something and then move money from your bank account over. And don't use your credit card if you don't have the money in your bank account to do that. But we don't live in a perfect world. So if it happens that you've charged something and you don't have the money to pay it, you at least must make that minimum payment on your credit card. And it is very easy for things to accumulate on your credit card if you're not in the habit of paying them off. So you really want to be careful because it suddenly can be at $2,000 and then how are you going to pay that off? So one, we don't want you to charge things up and then have this big balance that you have to deal with, because what happens is the credit card company charges you interest every month. And for a student credit card, it's usually around 20% interest every month. So that is very high, which means that your $300 train ticket starts to multiply the cost of that. And so every month you're paying more and more and more on top of what you owe. And it's a vicious, vicious cycle and hard to get out of if you're a student. So we don't want you to make that mistake. One mistake is the piling up all these purchases on your credit card and not being able to pay it off. But the other is your credit rating. So your credit rating is your financial report card. And that is what tells the whole world, basically, whether you are responsible with money or not. And you guys are working so hard to get good grades in grade 11 and grade 12, but honestly, no one will look at those marks for the rest of your life once you get into university or college. Your credit rating, that will be looked at for the rest of your life. So every time you go to apply for any kind of loan, so think like a car loan or a bank loan, a mortgage to buy a house, a for jobs, lots of jobs require a credit rating check. Getting your first apartment often requires a credit rating check. It's going to be looked at over and over. So that financial report card basically starts when you're 18. So you start building credit with your first credit event, which is often a credit card. Um, might be also getting a cell phone in your name, or getting like utilities or internet or something like that bill in your name. Those things all contribute to your credit rating. So if you don't pay that minimum payment on your credit card or pay your internet bill or your cell phone bill on time, then your credit rating goes down. So if you were an A plus, then it starts to go down if you don't pay those bills on time. Also, if you accumulate a big amount on your credit card, then that decreases your credit rating as well. So as soon as you exceed 30% of the amount available on your credit card, it starts to bring your credit rating down. So think if you have a limit of $1,000 on your credit card and now you've charged $400 on there and you don't pay it off, then that starts to affect your credit rating because it's over 30% of your available credit. So okay, that's I'm going to go back to my presentation because I get off track. So those are two things I want you to be aware of. The credit card, and it's not bad in theory to have a credit card. You just have to be responsible about it, and you can use it to charge things, but make sure you pay it off. And then I just want you to be aware of your credit rating. The biggest mishaps I see is people not paying their bills on time. You have 30 days to pay any bill that you get. If you don't pay it on time, it starts to affect your credit rating. So not paying your bills on time, running up your credit card so it affects your credit rating, and then letting other people pay the bill. And you'd think, when would I do that? But it happens often when you're a student that the internet bill is in one person's name, the utilities bill is in another person's name in the household, the something else bill is in someone else's name, and people take turns paying it. If a bill is in your name, you be responsible for paying it. Don't let anyone else pay the bill, you need to pay it because you want to make sure it's paid within the 30 days. I've heard all kinds of horror stories about people who had a utilities bill in their name in university and someone didn't pay it and it affected their credit rating for years. So you want to be careful of that mishap too. And then the final one is lines of credit.
I'm wondering too, Laura, if you can go
Yeah.
back once you're finished that, is just explaining how having a bad credit rating can affect you
Oh,
later on
yeah.
in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So when you go to like normally in graduating from university or college, some of the things you might do is buy a car or get an apartment. Those would be probably the first two things. So often landlords will do a credit rating check. When you go to rent an apartment, and if you have a low credit rating, they just won't take you, so you won't be able to get an apartment. And then a car loan, if you have a low credit rating, they'll charge you much higher interest on the loan, or they just won't give it to you. Um, and that really impacts your ability to navigate the adult world. And then when you go to buy a house, it's the same thing. If your credit rating is not high, then you won't get a mortgage, basically. It won't even give you a high interest mortgage. You just won't get one. So I've seen literally people who did damage in university to their credit rating and had to wait 7 years to buy their first house because they did so much damage in university and they had to wait for it to clear and they had to rebuild their credit rating. The way to build your credit rating so that it is good is to have some things in your name, like a few things that you pay regularly, like a cell phone bill. And you set it up and you pay it every month and you pay it on time, then you're building credit and it's good. That's a good thing. You want to have a couple of things in your name so that you can show, yes, my credit rating is good. Because if you have nothing in your name, then you have no credit rating. So you do have to have some things in your name. You just want to be careful that they're managed properly because it really can impact. Going back to the financial staircase, I'm just going to go back to the financial staircase for a second. So if you graduate and have completely damaged your credit rating here, this might, like in my industry, you couldn't get a job if you had a bad credit rating. We check everybody's credit rating. So that would impact maybe your ability to get a job, but it would definitely also affect your ability to buy your first house. So you're slowed down in these two steps, and probably you're slowed down in this step as well because you're limited in your jobs as well. So you've just slowed down your first three steps. And the guy that had his credit rating damaged in university that I know, he had to wait 7 years and rebuild his credit to be able to even buy a car. He had to buy a car for cash because he couldn't get a car loan. So we just don't want you to make those mistakes. We want you to understand that going in. I'm going to go back to lines of credit because that's just another. So lines of credit, what a line of credit actually is you have the ability to borrow from a bank. And sometimes, for example, a line of credit might be $5,000 or $10,000. It's not like you get $5,000, but you get the ability to borrow $5,000. So if you need it, you can use it. So sometimes there's lines of credit and sometimes there's student lines of credit that your parents sign to say that you're going to pay on this. As soon as you use some of that line of credit, then you have to start paying interest. With your student loans, you don't have to pay interest until you graduate. With the line of credit, you have to start paying the interest right away. So even if you don't have enough money for school and you use the line of credit to pay for school, you're also going to have to pay the interest payments every month. And it's the same thing with your credit rating. The line of credit has to be paid every month, that minimum payment, or it's going to affect your credit rating. So you just want to be careful. Sometimes you have to use a line of credit. And if you do, you do. But you just want to make sure that you're making that minimum payment every month so that it doesn't have to affect your credit rating. Is that clear on those pitfalls? Any questions about that? Oh,
Yeah, we have one question in the chat.
yeah.
What if someone decides not to get a credit card? Would they still be able to buy a house, car in the future?
Yes, they would, but they should have some things in their name. Like you should have a cell phone in your name. You should probably have utilities or internet in your name, because what your credit rating is it's showing that you are responsible to pay bills. And so if you have never had any bills in your name, then nobody knows that you're responsible and your credit rating is non-existent, basically. So then it would be hard to buy a house or a car. So you could go without a credit card, but you need to have some way of establishing credit. So if you don't do a credit card, then do a couple of other things that are in your name. I don't want to scare you on credit cards because they're quite useful if you use them responsibly. I just want to warn you that you do have to use them responsibly. Okay. And it doesn't mean you have to get one in first year either, right? Oh, did I go to the share?
No.
Okay, sorry. Um, you don't have to get it in first year either. You can just wait till second year or third year till you've got the hang of handling your money. It's a lot of money to handle in first year, especially to just get a grasp on what you're doing. So, and those big OSAP amounts come into your bank account, that's overwhelming for some people. So you want to be calm, and there's no harm in waiting until second or third year on the credit card if you're nervous about it. Okay, I'm trying to go to the share here.
There you go.
Okay. So your next steps. So what we want you to do for your next steps is pick a school and a program for next year, or a few of them, and then research all the costs associated with that destination. So what are the program costs? What's the residence? What's the meal plan? Everything that we've talked about. We want you to research all available sources of income. So think about where you are going to get the money for your schooling. Talk to your parents, apply for scholarships, come to the scholarship session and the grant session, and then do a budget for each of your school choices so that you are well prepared when you go to university or college, and you know, and you make your choice informed. So why make this financial plan? We want you to make an informed financial decision about where you're going. We want you to have fun and not stress. And if you don't have a plan, you will be stressed. And then there's more information next week about student loans and the following week about scholarships. So make sure you come to those sessions as well.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
I thought since we have a little bit of time, Laura, I might just jump into my blueprint and show them the tool in there that they might be able to use if they'd like to, and then we can open it up for questions.
Yeah.
So as a student of Limestone, and parents also have access to this if you want to make an account and attach to your student's account, and you have access to this after high school as well. You'll get a sheet in June, usually during your usually like a grad breakfast. You'll get a sheet about how to transfer your My Blueprint account to your personal email so that you can continue using the tool. So make sure you watch out for that and change it over, but you can then have the tool, access to the tool, as long as you log in once a year. You'll continue to have access. So if you're a student, you would go to Minds Online and then just click on My Blueprint and you'll automatically get logged in. If you're a parent, you could go to myblueprint.ca and then just click log in, and then you would log in. If you don't currently have a login, you would do school account login, and then you would just choose Limestone in here and follow the steps to make your account. And I'm just going to show you, whoops, not my desktop. There we go. I'm just going to show you what it looks like, what you're in your student account. So at the side, you can go to money and you can add a budget. So you can make multiple budgets. I created one just based on one of Laura's scenarios called post-secondary. So you would just go to add new budget. So I'll just go into the one I created here. And the nice part is that you can, it's very visual to allow you to see, and you can add income and expenses here. So if I added an income, it allows me to see family contributions, work income, student loans, so I can add my scholarships and grants. You can put the details in there and add them. And same with expenses. So if I go to expenses, you can go here and choose what type of expense it might be. Maybe it's a personal expense, maybe it's a living expense, and it's my cell phone. You can put in your monthly cost for that. So you can really detail this part here, and then you can see income and expenses as it represents on here as well. And it's nice because you can kind of see the breakdown of what you're spending there and be able to do that. The other great thing about this tool is Laura did mention researching. So researching the post-secondary school institutions that you might want to go to or the programs. You can also do that here. So if I were to go into a school and choose a program, so maybe I'm going to pick construction and I'm going to choose, let's just say brick and stone masonry program. You can go in and actually see information about the programs. So most of them will have details here. This is a specific trades program that's newer to this college. But down here, you would see the tuition. You can actually click add to budget and it will make these two fields right within your budget. So I can go add to budget because maybe this is the one I want to try. I can add it to my post-secondary budget and add as an expense. And you can say the amount in there as well as the residence. So it's great that it automatically links to your budgets that you've already created and doesn't make it more work for you. So that's also a great tool. If you're looking for summer work, there's also occupations in here that are under job search. So you can go in and search Kingston, for instance, and look for any part-time work or summer work that you might want to add that to your income for your budget. So just wanted to quickly show that. There's lots of other opportunities to use the tool. There's guides in here. There's a budget and finance guide as well, cover letter, etc. So there's lots of different ways that you can use this tool. But I do want to leave time for questions, so I'll